All right, everybody, if I could have your attention, please. Let's see, the time is now 6:33, and I'd like to open the meeting, this hearing, I believe is number 12, according to my reckoning, regarding SLT's application for a 40B comprehensive permit. Let's see, do I have a second to open the meeting?
Second.
All in favor of opening? Aye. Okay, now we're open for business. All right, so let's see, first point of procedure, I need to advise everyone in the room, namely that there's also a Board of Selectmen meeting scheduled at 7 o'clock to handle matters related to the earth removal permit for SLT. So at 7 o'clock, we will recess this hearing so the Board of Selectmen can conduct their hearing, and when they're finished, we will resume our hearing and go from there. So we'll try to get as much done as we can in this roughly half hour, and then recess, and then resume and finish up what we can tonight. So with that, this meeting had to be noticed again in the newspaper due to a failure of quorum, failure to schedule for the last time. So that was done in the newspaper as advised. So everyone who has notice, who should have notice, and everyone who appears to be here, who needs to be here. So tonight we're going to we have some new plans that the applicant has submitted regarding various matters related to soil issues, and they have, here's the new plan, and I'm sure Dave can probably post it tonight. Can I send it to you?
Do we have electronic ones too?
Yeah, we have electronic ones, and we'll make.
Red 5?
Yeah, that's the Red 5.
Okay.
Anyway, so we will make those available, to the town's site for that, this by the end of the week, since they are a substantial revision. And I understand that Mr. Dillon is here from Geoscience. Is that correct?
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you, sir. And anyway, so I think it would probably be best if the applicant's representative tells us about the revisions to the plans and address the hydrogeology issues that have arisen from around the last meeting. Does that make sense to everybody else?
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Dillon, if you'd like to tell us
Sure.
what you...
I did submit a brief letter. So we changed direction a bit. Rather than get into arguing where down gradient was, what cross gradient is, that was not addressed in Mr. Horsley's calculations. The model that he used really can't be used to evaluate impact. It's a mass balance model. It's not for evaluating water quality impacts to the subsurface below the water table. So to avoid going back and forth, we made a simple change. We changed some lot lines. Title V basically gives you two options. One is to do aggregation of flow, and then the other is to meet the nitrogen loading limits either by land size or land size plus treatment. And so I really don't have anything else to say other than Brad went through and they changed all they changed a lot of the lot lines to meet those requirements.
All right, so...
So now the lots all either load at 550 gallons per day per acre or 660 gallons per day per acre, depending on the size. And that does meet the Title V requirement of 15.217. But it does need enhanced nitrogen removal. So that will be one of the waivers that they're asked, because you don't allow advanced nitrogen removal here. So that is one of the waivers that they'll be requesting. And also one of the waivers would be setback to wells, but I think I already addressed that. That's not changed at all. So that's in a nutshell.
So Dave, I think you have up there their old configuration.
No. Is that the?
No, no, that with the red lines, that was the new lot lines.
No, I don't think so, because their plan shows a very different, no, that's,
Do you want
I
the
think
engineer to go through the plan
I think the
changes?
overlay would be appropriate. So what the overlay plan shows, it was the first one you had out.
Okay.
This is revision 4, I think, up here now.
so I think revision 5 is what we're looking for here.
That's what I just had up.
Revision 5 with the
Well,
red.
let's-
Five, just came in.
So there was the plan set, and there was a separate plan, there was the standalone, okay. So this is, well, it's kind of cut off, but we thought it would be, we thought it would be helpful to show the previous version of the plan
Okay.
with the red overlay, which indicates the changes in lot lines and, you know, we moved some buildings around because the lot lines changed, and as Mr. Dillon indicated, we eliminated the open space parcel A, which is about 11.5 acres, which we were using for nitrogen credit. So to eliminate the concern that anybody would have over that, over our ability to use that as nitrogen credit land, we encompassed all of that area now into the individual lots. So all of the lots were sized appropriately to stand on their own merit without needing any credit land. And as Mr. Dillon indicated, the nitrogen loading that we're proposing is either 550 gallons per acre or 660 gallons per acre, which is allowed under Title V. There are, you know, I don't know, 20 approved technologies, 18 DEP approved technologies for enhanced nitrogen removal. So that's what we'll be using for this project. So again, the road didn't change at all. The design of the drainage facilities didn't change at all. There was a very modest increase in impervious surface, negligible. So the drainage facilities, the two basins, the two infiltration basins were over-designed to begin with. There's a material that's so permeable. So we did not have to change the configuration or elevations of any of the stormwater components. But nevertheless, the project configuration changed. We moved some lot lines. Some of the lots now have two, you can see, maybe it's difficult to see in red, but some of the lots on the right as you come in, maybe the fourth or fifth ones on the right now have 2 units across from each other. There's a common driveway, we should say, if you back up towards the entrance.
Excuse me for one moment, Brad. Dave, could you, there should be somewhere on their plan there, new lots. Can we, move to those? Because I think it might make me a little clearer for,
In that same,
yeah, it should be the same group here.
let's see.
Is there more than one?
It's in
There's a separate PDF plan set.
the Dropbox.
Yes, in the Dropbox.
What are we talking? Type nitrogen?
Try that,
Pond,
yeah,
The plan set.
try that one. Okay, all right, so this,
There you go.
this first page, all right, shows, so there's the new lots. That's how they're now configured with, and for example, for lots on the, I guess, the northerly side, although I know it's not northerly, it's sort of like, I think it's northwest. You've expanded the lot sizes, 2, 3, 4, et cetera, pretty much double wide of what they were, as I understand it. And then on the southerly, the southeasterly side, you've added these narrow corridors back to the lot line, and it goes pretty much all the way down as you go through those lots. As I understand it, so essentially, the lots have been reconfigured to accommodate your proposed nitrogen loads that you've discussed in the letters, as I understand it. So anyway, so why do all of them seem to have like some of these very narrow corridors to the lot line? Is that necessary for your loading?
It's to take advantage of all the open space and incorporate all the open space into each lot as required.
All right. Okay, and,
In other words, the lots don't need to be, if I may.
No, for sure.
They don't have to be rectangular, square, or a shape that would accommodate more, local drainage. It can be pork chop or,
Drainage?
yeah, or whatever it is. you're
Well,
trying
there's
to
no-
provide.
There's no,
Leaching, if you will.
well, the individual septic systems are not located in those portions of the lots that are at the ends of those, we'll call them rat tails, okay? So they're all located in, the utility plan shows the locations of the septic systems and the wells, and that we meet Title V separation requirements.
All right, so it's strictly to meet requirement.
It's to eliminate the nitrogen credit land and to incorporate so that each lot meets Title V with respect to nitrogen load.
So there's enough square footage to
Correct,
qualify.
correct.
Right. Makes it a tough lot to fence off, I would imagine. But, be that as it may.
Thanks. Can I still up a
Yeah.
little here? Okay, all right, so if I look at this plan correctly, essentially, every square foot of, every square foot of land in this parcel designated to one of these lots? It looks like, or the road, it looks like it.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you eliminate anything? Or you just made the lots?
Eliminate any.
I don't, you didn't eliminate any houses
No,
or anything?
no,
It's just,
we
you just,
had to move,
you just moved the lines
we had
of
to-
the,
move the lines, so we had to move some units around.
Dave, if you scroll to the next page, I'd like to ask about,
I don't know if we can do that. Yeah, I guess we can,
scrolling at, all right, keep going. Keep go, I think there's, I think that's, is that one? No, I
huh?
want
That
to see.
shows the actual boundaries.
Yeah, I thought there was, one. Okay, that's the one I wanted to show, all right, so.
Okay, this is what we used to see.
so the wells gonna be in the same place? Like the wells and the septics are gonna be in the same place? It's, you
Well, the
just,
septics, with the units moving and the lot lines moving, some of the
Some are
septic systems are
moving.
well moved as well.
okay.
All right, so anyway, so I've asked to put up the new proposed configuration of the units. Now, there's still gonna be 30 units, although some of them have shifted due to the lot lines being shifted. You can, now, for example, in the old plan, on the up, the northwesterly side of the road, there were, about twice as many houses, buildings on that side of the road till you get to the cul-de-sac, and now you've shifted some of those by, essentially by having a common driveway to the south with two units on that lot, and that sort of thing, as I see it. That's the new proposed plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you talk about nitrate, advanced nitrate removing technologies. And you say 18 technology has to receive nitrogen removal credit. When and how do you select which technology you're going to use?
Well, we we have a few in mind. I mean, there's a list, if you go onto the DEP website, in that section, there's a host of various technologies that have been approved for general use in new construction, for both removal of 550 and 660 gallons per day per acre. So, I mean, we're in the process of pricing them.
Okay.
And trying to determine, what makes sense for the project, but, I mean, the technology has to be, approved by the DEP.
And as I think I understood you correctly, or I understood Mr. Dillon correctly, Plympton has a regulation that says no advanced technologies can be used.
They do a local Board of Health rule.
All right, look. Now, if you did not have these, now, now, is the advanced technology required for you to meet the 550 or 660 requirement for Title V?
Yes.
Okay. And, and please, cut us a little slack. We're dealing with an area, I think, as all three of us, is almost completely unknown to us. So if you ask questions that might sound a little basic, please bear with us.
So the approval is, the initial Title V was 440 gallons per day per acre. Those calculations assume that the discharge is at 35 milligrams per liter of nitrate. Scott had that, Mr. Horsley had that in his calculation. That results, if you have an acre of land, then the dilution of that docks it, the load down to 10 milligrams per liter, which is a drinking water standard. So for 550 an acre, the systems that are approved will treat to less than 25 milligrams per liter of nitrate, which is then you get to so then you're at, the load is at 10 milligrams per liter per lot, which again is a drinking water standard. So at 660, those treatment systems will knock the nitrogen down to 19 milligrams per liter, which gives you the 660. Now, most of these systems will actually go quite a bit below that, but they're not approved yet for those lower limits.
Okay, and these systems, where do you install the system? Do you install the system like before it gets to the septic tank, or in the leaching field, or where do they?
It's usually after the tank or in the tank.
Okay. And do you have any? Never mind. Is this something that you can do economically with one of these technologies and be effective in getting it to the required limit?
Yeah, there's lots of them all around the state. Most towns encourage them.
The entire Cape region is required to use them
Okay.
for all private septic.
I mean, their soil tends to be a little more difficult. I can understand that. All right, so.
No, just move to the next one. To see the septic symbol. It's the region.
But anyway, you mentioned something that, all right, so now with the lots on the northwest, right, the now enlarged lots. Now, as I recall from the former plan, you had one septic system for two of those, for the two duplexes that were side by side on the smaller lots, the old plan. I mean, I think that's what my memory recalls. So now it looks like each of those units up top will have their own septic system. Was that correct, or did I misremember something?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, so now there are some, but there are other units on the plan that where two buildings will share the septic. I see, yeah,
Yeah.
like lots
Yeah.
8 and 9, but not all of them. So when you redid the plans, I understood very quickly that the same number of buildings are going to be on this piece of property, right? Now, did you have to increase or decrease the number of septic systems as well, or is that also the same?
No, it's the same.
Okay.
Same bedroom count as well.
Okay,
There are 6 3-bedroom units and 54 2-bedroom units.
and when you do for the 3-bedroom units, do you size those systems a little larger than the 2-bedroom units, or are they pretty much the same?
They're larger. They have to be
Okay.
larger.
Not twice as large, though. Because if this is 2 bedrooms, that's 4 bedrooms, it's not you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why it would be another bank of,
Now, when you redid your calculations, is there somewhere in here where it goes lot by lot to show that that the new lots as configured will meet the requirement?
Yes, we submitted a table 1.
Okay.
Nitrogen loading calculations. We go lot by lot
Okay,
to show you what's required under Title V and what's provided.
all right. Where can I find
I
this?
saw
There was a
It was
separate
on the screen,
PDF,
too.
it's in the Dropbox, so it's a separate
Separate
PDF.
page.
Okay,
separate one, in the beginning,
Yeah, table 1.
or is this going?
oh, I think he was looking for another file in there.
It's in the Dropbox.
Yeah.
Oh, in the Dropbox itself, okay, we have to go back. Dropbox, I guess.
Table one on the bottom.
Bottom one?
This one here.
All the way
Table,
down, yeah.
nitrogen.
Okay, all right. Okay, I see. So, what? Okay, hold on here for a minute, I just want to pull those up on my machine. Okay. All right, I've got it here, all right, okay.
Yeah, we go full screen. I can't get
I see, okay. All right, so, okay, so we have it on the screen here. All right, so as I understand it, you know, the lots that so essentially there's lots like lots 1 through 7 that only have one physical building on them, so two bedrooms there, and then we have like lots 15 and 16, which are, you know, there are 2 buildings on that lot, and, you know, each of the, you know, so essentially you add the, you know, essentially you do that, or maybe I got it wrong, but anyway, but I see that the number of bedrooms is based on you know, whether it's a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, and there's 1 or 2 houses on that lot. Okay, I understand that. And it appears you go, you know, linearly according to the total daily flow. All right, you know, I got all that. All right, so yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think. All right, so, all right, so does. So anyway, so I was going to ask, if none of the other members of the board have questions, I think I would ask any. Oh, actually, it's getting close to 7 o'clock here. So, see, I don't want to start to cut off somebody in the middle of middle of what they want to say. So,
prepare a question and then go back.
I'm sorry.
Just prepare a question and in this case, break it seven.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Well, I do have one question. I do have one question before we, you know, we're going to get close to the end. But can you pull up the what do you call the plan again? No, the one that actually shows the houses. Okay, that's coastal. So I think I have one time for one question before we have to recess. The new units that show up there, the red one with the with, you know, now that there's some on the southerly lot that have 2 houses, is that going to be any issue for access for fire or emergency services, because now they have this driveway they have to go down to get from one to the other?
Well, the driveway's 20 feet wide, which meets state fire code.
Turn 90 to get in here, but
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the fire had access, because on on the old plan, it was like, they sort of branch off, whereas here you've got one behind the other, so one is a little further back from the road than the other, so.
Right, they'll have to come in line.
I'm not sure if we need to, maybe when we get back, I think the fire chief is here, so maybe we can ask him if he has an issue with that. But anyway, all right, so it's now 6:58, and I think that it might be a good time to entertain a recess so that the Board of Selectmen can have their meeting, then we can resume this.
Are they gonna come up here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll let them come up here, because that's the, yeah, so they'll be recorded. So, anyway, so at this time, we're going to recess this hearing, and we will vacate the table and allow the Board of Selectmen to hold their meeting with the applicant, and then resume when they're finished. Thank you. All right, so anyway, so now the time is now 7:07, and I'd like to end the recess and resume the hearing on this matter. All right, so, anyway, so, all right, so when we left off, Mr. Fire Chief, Captain, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to look at the new house configuration plan, but did you anticipate any issues with the new lots and houses as currently configured?
At first glance, yes. I have a few questions. My very first question for you, though, is, with all due respect, do you prefer that I submit, based on, I know you have a specific topic for tonight's meeting, do you want me to submit the things that I saw to the board in writing, or do you want me to discuss it right now, or I don't want to violate any issues? Because I know it's outside of what the meeting was posted for.
Well, I mean, it depends on how strictly you review the notice. If it is an issue that arose due to the hydrogeology report, I think it would be impliedly encompassed within the scope of the notice. So, but again, it's, we do have something of a, but I think it would probably be beneficial if you'd like to speak generally to any concerns you might have, that we hear them now.
In general, and again, this is the first time that, John Schuristed, Plympton Fire Captain, and I'm the Fire Prevention Captain. This is the first time I had a chance to take a look at it. A couple of things that I did see that jumped out at me was the access. I know you said there was, the driveway was 20 foot. I would have to take a look at that and discuss that with you guys. Based on the new configuration, one of the, and again, I'm looking on paper, so forgive me, one of the buildings looked like the garage access, if you would, was very limited, and that could just be the way the drawing is on the screen. The other issue is how close some of the buildings appear on paper. So for exposure from one building to the other, that may be an issue for us. The other thing that I noticed was possibly ladder placement if we had to utilize a ladder truck. Those are the things that jumped out at me real quick. And if I can, looks a little bit different on this one. Dave, could you scroll down just a little bit?
Yeah.
It's the other way, I'm sorry, scroll up, I apologize.
Well, the housing, the plot plans have changed, and the orientation of the buildings have changed.
Right. So just to give you guys a heads up of what I'm seeing, and again, this is the first time I looked at it. This appears much smaller to me than what these appeared, and it may be or it may not be. It doesn't look like 20 feet, it probably is. So what the concern is, if you have a vehicle that parks on this access road going to these houses here, or these units, if you will, blocking our access trying to get to these buildings, that just jumps out at me. And again, that's something we can discuss down the road once we have time to actually look at it. This is my first look at it, so I'm not holding you to what I see here. And then the exposure issue that I saw was, sorry Dave, if you can scroll up again just for a sec. These just look a little bit closer than the ones in the past. Do you know what the distance is offhand between those?
I believe it's between 15 and 20 feet, but I
Is
mean,
that much?
the building can move. I mean, each of these lots are gonna come in for a separate review when the septic design is finalized and the grading plans are finalized. So, I mean, that building can easily move, the building on the left can easily move further left.
Okay.
And that's the case with all these lots, really.
If it'd be easier, and if you guys are okay with it, whatever works best for everybody, if you want, I can submit just a couple of the questions that I see that jump out at me. I can submit them to the board, and then you guys can submit an answer to the concerns. Is that acceptable, or?
Yes, I think that would be best.
Okay, once I have a chance to look at it and really dive into it, I'll submit something to the board and certainly be available.
All right, and we will be posting the most recent submissions to the town website so that though there is, I think there might be one extra copy of the plan available at the building department, but we will be posting the new submissions to the town's website in their digital format, so anyone can look at them. Right, so that addresses the fire issue.
Wait, he brought up something interesting, though, because I know you were gonna do no parking along the road for the firefighters. That was one of the things, we weren't gonna have parking on the main road, but now we have the side roads, which people would be parking on most likely. So I just didn't know if that was,
I just want to make it clear, the old version of the plan also had common driveways.
yeah.
Yes, it did
And
have some.
some of which were, some of them were not even, we weren't showing as 20 feet wide all the way up. So, and there was no concern about those.
Let me go back and ask a question. Now, on the old plan, you had something called credit land. And as I understood, that was sort of like an open space where nobody's lot line would be, where everybody's lot line would be around this open space. And that would be your so-called credit land. Did you need to reconfigure these lots to eliminate that land? Because essentially you're dealing with the same land, regardless of whether you call it on lot A or the common or the open space lot. Was there any particular reason why the credit land had to be eliminated for your new plan?
Go ahead. Yes, yeah. So you don't have to do nitrogen loading calculations. It's not, but under the plan that is here. Each lot meets the requirements because it's automatically felt by DEP back when we did the technical evaluation of Title V that was going to be adequate. So it's in lieu of aggregation of flow. So an aggregation of flow requires hydrogeology that probably is going to be, there'll be arguments, and it just made sense just to move lot lines.
All right,
To eliminate the concern altogether.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
So we didn't eliminate or reduce the amount of acres
No.
of open space? Okay.
No, open space is gone.
All right, well, the Board of Health, I think, would like to speak. So, Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to say something, now would be a good time.
So the open space, is that part of the open space, the 33.75 acres that's described in the MEPA permit?
Yes.
Okay. What's the process for reversing that from open space to subdivided into lots?
Let me clarify, even though the MEPA has nothing to do with this hearing, back in 2018, we filed an E&F for the 6-lot subdivision. Lot 6 was partially in the town of Plympton. What that narrative said, and I believe what he's referring to, is that there was a certain amount of impervious coverage and a certain amount of open space. What maybe we didn't make it clear in the narrative was that all the open space is it's what's not proposed buildings or roads or driveways. Open space is grass, it's woods, it's everything that's not paved.
Okay.
And at the time, we had a you know, we made assumptions as to how the 6 lots are gonna be developed, and, you know, we said there was, you know, there was a limit of work that was assumed back then, and we're not that far off from what was assumed in both towns. So the application was not only for Plympton, it was for all the work in Carver as well.
Right. And that application encompassed the land in Carver, which is mostly what the commercial buildings are now, is that right?
Right.
Okay. And so getting back to Mr. Anderson's question, what procedure will you need to do to have MIPA address this outstanding open space issue?
Well, it's not really an outstanding open space issue.
Okay.
It's a private party filed a notice of project change request with MIPA. And we've had a meeting with MIPA to discuss it, and they're giving us an opportunity to respond. We're in the process of doing so.
All right, so now I'd like to make an observation that, that whatever the applicant's obligations or requirements under MIPA, that has to be handled by the MIPA entity, which is a state entity. And thus, you know, the zoning board of appeals have no authority to tell MIPA what to do, nor does MIPA have authority to tell us, you know, how we handle the applicant's comprehensive permit. Now, to the extent that both entities, well, multiple entities, need to align themselves to allow the applicant to build, those matters must be handled independently. All I can suggest is that that there may be a condition in any permit granted, or maybe it's even an inherent condition, if not necessarily one expressly stated, that the applicant will have to meet whatever obligations it has regarding the MIPA proceedings in order to proceed. If any, as you say. You know, so if there are MIPA, you know, matters that need to be addressed, that will have to be addressed by that body, a state body, and whoever has filed an opposition or a notice of plan change can pursue that remedy to the extent that body's rules and procedures allow. So, all right, so now I think it would be a good moment to observe that we've had these plans, you know, for about 2 days, and I know that they address Mr. Horsley's comments made at the last meeting. So I would anticipate that we would, you know, at our next meeting, whenever that's going to be, we're not ready yet to talk about scheduling it, but at our next meeting, we would try to schedule a meeting that would be where both experts may be present and they can address each other's reports as required. So that would be my suggestion of how we move forward with finally considering the new nitrate loading submissions that have been made here tonight and the objections that have been previously been raised. So that, you know, when we get around to schedule the next meeting, I think we'll, you know, make sure that that's part of the notice of what we're going to be doing in the next meeting. All right, so.
What 2 experts, can I ask, what 2 experts are you referring to?
Mr. Dillon and Mr. Horsley.
So you're keeping the hearing open to afford Mr. Horsley an opportunity to respond to Mr. Dillon?
That's correct.
And, I mean, this could go on for, you know, 3-4 more months.
I really hope not.
Well, there's a date by which you must make that decision.
That's correct. So if we,
I believe we're beyond that date. We've given extensions.
yes,
What is the extension date now? What is,
May 29.
29th.
so a decision must, now, Paul Cusson from Delphic Associates, prior to that date, I would think that the board is going to want to get into not deliberations, but discussion on the waiver list and those kinds of things. So the issue between the 2 engineers could be conditioned, or let that other engineer file whatever he needs to file.
Can I just, I agree, but you have 2 experts that the applicant has paid for. One's a civil engineering expert, and one is a hydrogeologist that reviewed our design and Mr. Dillon's report. And they both found no issues with even the nitrogen credit land. So we made the change in response to what we believe is somewhat of a subjective interpretation of the Title V nitrogen credit requirement. So, but to eliminate that concern, we made the change, we eliminated all the credit land. So, I mean, you already have two experts that have essentially blessed the project. In fact, a waiver list was submitted to us by Attorney Murray a month and a half ago with recommendations from GEI and JDE and Attorney Murray as to what waivers should be granted, including Board of Health rules and from your local Board of Health rules and regulations. And your consultant, who was hired to render an opinion on those waivers from the Board of Health regulations, has essentially agreed with all of our requests.
Yes, Mr. Anderson?
So I'm not speaking on behalf of Mr. Horsley, but from what I see here, all the conditions that he outlined in his report still exist. The only thing that's changed is the lot lines. They've generated acres on paper, but the actual conditions have changed very little. So I think it would be unwise to move forward without fully addressing whether or not there is going to be interference with the wells and if the drinking water is going to be a problem down the road. And another thing is, there's a notice of project change that MIPA is waiting on from the applicant. And that could dictate the way the land is used. So I think it would be unwise to make a decision before that decision has been made.
We would be strongly opposed to waiting till something is done with MIPO. It's going to be a condition of approval that we have to comply with state law, and so that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I agree with you on the part that, you know, we have no control over the MIPA applications. How you should proceed regarding that is all on you guys. You know, as far as the rest goes, you know, I still think that the board would benefit from, if it's possible within the time frame, to hear any response Mr. Horsley has to make.
Could I ask a question? Mm-hmm. The board has its own experts, and its own experts have evaluated the competing contentions of the two experts, one ostensibly from the Board of Health and the one from the applicant. You should be relying on your experts, not somebody else's experts. Unless
The board
you
will
don't-
decide on whose experts to rely on, Mr. Galvin. Thank you.
They are your experts.
Yes, there's evidence is open to all. It's not simply a private conversation between you guys and I guys. Any evidence that's brought before the board's attention from a reputable source must be considered.
You want me to say something? All right. So I can just address, let me just address the hydrogeology, that's all. So the questions that were raised by Mr. Horsley, by moving lot lines, yes, we meet the requirements of Title V and loading per acre of 10 milligrams per liter. Now, as far as the impact to the water supplies, the calculations that he provided can't be used to evaluate impacts to water supply. He used a mass balance analysis that doesn't take into account any of the aquifer characteristics that these wells are placed in that are much deeper. And if you look at my letter, there's a quote in here from the technical evaluation of Title V. He basically says that there is no, that Title V does not evaluate down gradient receptors. Well, they definitely do. The technical evaluation of Title V, which was written in 1991, which I was the third author on, basically states that reducing the threat to nitrate-nitrogen contamination in private water supply wells can also be accomplished through the use of deeper wells with well screens installed below the upper, more contaminated groundwater layer. That is an opinion in the technical evaluation of Title V that was reviewed by hundreds of wastewater engineers and environmental geologists.
Is this you're referring to this figure here?
I know, I'm referring to the paragraph below it.
Okay.
The figure that's there is most current understanding of how water gets to a well. It doesn't come from around the well edges, it comes from further back from a recharge area, most likely Ricketts Pond. So the water's not originating on the site, it's coming down, recharges, drives it down. These wells will all be screened well below the water table where the septic discharge is. So it's like this figure is actually from the study on this aquifer.
So is this your response to Horsley's letter?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Where can I get that? Did we get it?
Yes,
Did
we
get
do
an
get a copy.
electronic one
The
already?
Dropbox, yeah.
Okay.
So each
We do have
point,
copies of it.
each
I have
point's
to take one
addressed.
if you have an extra.
Yeah, sure, just take that.
Just because I think one of the things, just for me as a member of the board, you know, I was hoping for an opportunity to discuss the water issues more in depth, because he brought up a lot of things that made me go, huh, you know, this is interesting information. And I know one of you had said it was his opinion. And I was like, well, what in the report was his opinion? You know, and that's what, this is your response
That's
to
my
that?
response,
Okay. Because this just came out Monday.
yeah.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to read this, so.
Again, the point of moving the lot lines, there's, like I said, there's two parts, well, you'll read it. There's two parts that allow you different, in nitrogen-sensitive areas, which this clearly is, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There's two ways that you can approach it. One gets into arguing back and forth, which we decided that we would not bother doing. And the other method is basically just complying with what we have done at this point, moving lot lines.
And regarding the,
Everything here at this point meets Title V.
regarding the question as to whether or not there'd be contamination from the Title V systems of the wells, again, your own consultant, GEI, indicated that there should not be a concern. So,
Yes.
Jeremy's gonna-
Yes,
Comment.
yes, Mr. Anderson.
My response to that is, the plan has changed since then, so GEI's comments are no longer relevant or less relevant.
You'll need to unlock your
That's
iPhone
incorrect.
first.
And Mr. Dillon speaks well, and he seems knowledgeable about the subject, but he's an expert, and we are not. And I think that's all the more reason to have review, because it's a new plan, there should be a new review.
What are your thoughts?
Mr. Horsley asked for a week so he could be prepared for the next meeting.
Should we be able to meet
No, we
next
just
week
got this
with
stuff
them?
yesterday.
I mean, because
Anyway, just for,
we are not experts in all this.
anyway, but just for every, yes,
I mean, I'm sort of a layperson as well in this, although I've been doing these developments for a long, long time. And it seems to me that the board required the applicant to spend substantial amount of money to pay for your experts, and your experts agree. And our engineers have, their credentials are pretty substantial. And this third party, from my point of view, all of this is third party, and the permit can certainly be conditioned on a number of those issues. We have to comply with Title V. It's very simple. We have to comply with Title V.
so with respect to how the plan has changed, the lot lines have been shifted, some buildings have been moved, but from a Board of Health Title V perspective, we're still asking for the same, the separation distances between the wells and the septic systems, which is really what this is all about, have not changed. So I'm not sure
so,
what you,
all right, well, so if you're engineering, if you compare your old plan to your new plan, you say the separation between, you say the wells and the septic, you say it's not changed, even though you've now placed buildings in different lots or expanded lots on the new plan, is that correct?
What I'm saying is the separation distances have not changed relative to each lot, the septic system and the well.
Okay.
We're still complying with Title V requirements, and those are the waivers we've asked for, and those are the waivers that have been recommended by your experts be granted.
Title V recommends, or it requires, what the distance is, a certain distance between
100
well and septic.
All right, so the engineering on your,
That has not changed.
all right, so the engineering on your new plan will still show that 100-foot separation for each lot, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So I guess I'm wondering, so the waiver list that was edited by Attorney Murray and your experts recommending certain approval of certain waivers, is that no longer valid? What are we reviewing here?
Mr. Chair, could I just interrupt for a moment? I just want to clarify one thing. Yes, there has been a waiver list that has been shared. And yes, GEI and JDE have made some recommendations to the board on the waiver list. I want to be clear, I have not made any recommendations on any waivers. I've made some
You
comments
made comments.
on wanting some additional details, but I would like it reflected I didn't make any recommendation to approve those waivers. But yes, JDE and GEI have made some recommendations to the board on all of those waivers.
Plus one.
Let's also not forget, in this whole process, you've got JDE and Greg Driscoll here. He is your peer review consultant. You know, if you wanted him to look at the submissions that just came in the other day and give you some sort of updated report, I think that's certainly within the board's purview to request that. You know, you got a new stormwater calculations. I would think that Greg could look at that pretty quickly. You know, that's up to you as to whether or not you think you need something further from JDE.
Well, Mr. Driscoll, do you think you could review those, these changes expeditiously?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so yes, we would want that. So I think, it sounds like to me that we will, the next, do you recall when we scheduled the dog hearing for?
I don't think it's. on
Oh,
my
wait,
schedule.
that's the kennel one,
That's the
right?
kennel hearing.
I might have an email on that, I'm not sure.
I'll pull it up.
What's gonna happen?
I think that was May 20th.
Let's see,
Is that like
Yes,
continued
that was
from
kind
the one I missed? you
Yeah.
guys?
Okay, all right, so,
That's the same one.
yeah, he'll want to take 5 minutes.
I missed that. though.
Hers will
That's
take long.
continued from the one I missed.
I don't know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I just want to note that the captain of the fire department captain, made a couple of comments, and I think he's correct in some of those comments that he made about the buildings, but, for example, if two buildings are too close, the building code requires that those be sprinkled buildings. So either they would have to be sprinkled, or, as Brad has suggested, they possibly could be moved a little bit to accommodate his comments.
All right.
And that's something that can very easily
Yeah.
be conditioned. And I think one of the things the board's got to remember as well, once you issue the decision, we're not done. We have to then comply with the terms and conditions of that permit in the way of plans. And Greg and other people will have an opportunity to review that to be sure that the final set of plans comply with the permit that the board has issued. So there's another look at it that will happen.
Okay.
And to that
And then
point,
eventually, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, to that point, remember, you're not granting septic system permits under Title V.
Okay.
Those go to the Board of Health.
Something to
So you're
love.
just addressing the local Board of Health
So it's-
waivers.
All right, so essentially, when they're ready to go for their Title V permit, they make their application, they go to the Board of Health, but the Board of Health's decision-making authority is constrained by whatever waivers we granted here at the end of
Correct.
this process. All right, so, yes, Mrs. Captain Soja?
Captain Shursted, The only other thing that I would suggest, if you could just give me a short bit of time to touch base with Bill Kelly, the building inspector. There may be some fire-related building codes that'll have to be addressed. Or may not have to be, but
But those
maybe
could be, those could be
applicable.
conditioned.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
And we don't have to grant all those waivers.
You don't have to grant any waivers, no. But we do have to get to a point where you actually
vote.
make a decision on those waivers.
Okay. So anyway, so that is, I believe I did put that on the notice for tonight's meeting, that we would,
Yep.
continue waiver review based on wherever we left off at the last time, and I'm
Right.
kind of relying on you to
Yes.
make sure
Yep.
we know where we need to go next. So anyway, so here's my suggestion of what, we need another hearing. I think, between the fire chief and between the Board of Health wants to review this, I think, I don't want to speak for all of us prematurely, but I think we do want to have, some opportunity to respond. So we will need another hearing before May 29th, perhaps even 2 hearings, which I know is a trifle ambitious, but but that's the deadline we have, so we have to make do with next 3 weeks and a day that we have available to us. So, as I've been told, because for some reason I didn't have it on my personal calendar, even though I sent out the notices, we do have a hearing scheduled for May 20th regarding unrelated matters. We could have a hearing that evening, to continue on with this one, and so that would probably be my suggestion. I think that probably would manage with everybody's timelines, but.
Mr. Dillon is out of the country until the 21st. He's available on the 21st and afterwards.
Okay. All right, well,
Mr. Chairman, maybe it'd be helpful to the board that we can be, because what happens is that once the hearing is closed, we cannot add any additional testimony, and the board cannot take any additional testimony. And typically, my experience has been in the negotiation and the finalization of the building of the comprehensive permit, we want to have some back and forth discussion about some of those things. And maybe we can, up to the board, maybe we could have a meeting to discuss all of those things outside of the issue that's been raised relating to Title V. There are many other issues, many other conditions, et cetera, that's going to apply to this permit. So I'm just trying to leave it open, so it's not good for the town, and for the board, and it's not good for the developer to not have those discussions, and then you issue a decision, and something crazy in that decision that nobody thought about, we have to appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. We don't want to do that. And it can be very simple stuff. I mean, we had a case in Duxbury where the board or their attorney inadvertently added some language that was cut and pasted from another decision that was irrelevant, and we had to go to the Housing Appeals Committee. Had that been discussed in an open meeting, we could have eliminated a lot of time and effort. That's just a suggestion that I have.
But I know that, the 29th is our deadline for, as I understand it, that's our deadline for cutting off testimony. And at that point, we should have a decision in principle about what waivers we're going to grant and what waivers we're not going to grant. And then at that time, we have the 40 days to hammer out a decision. I would think that at least some of that, some of those issues may be caught during the decision-making process, issuing process, I want to say. But to the extent that there, obviously, we do want to try and, avoid a housing appeal that's unnecessary due to, to minor issues which you mentioned. Obviously, if there is an issue that the board and the applicant disagrees upon that's a substantial matter, then obviously to the Housing Appeals Committee you must go. But that's the nature of the process.
Yeah, I would suggest, with all due respect, that, I don't think Attorney Murray has done this yet, is a draft decision for discussion.
Well, we can do that, but first we need to have a vote, I believe, on principles of that decision, essentially, what we grant, what we refuse.
It's just a draft, it's for discussion purposes.
Well, it's,
Typically, how I do it, and it's up to the board, obviously, whether you want to keep the public hearing open or not. But typically, once you vote on waivers, everything starts to fall into place. And you could vote on the waivers while the public hearing is still open. Because you're gonna want the back and forth with the applicant of what is the nature of this waiver? To what extent do you comply or can you not comply, that sort of thing. And as you start to vote on those, like for example, let's take an extreme situation. If you were to deny all of the waivers, I have a pretty good indication then of which way the ultimate decision goes. Conversely, if many of the waivers are granted, that seems to suggest a direction that the board has taken, even though you haven't voted yet. I have a stock decision that has all sorts of standard conditions in it, including things like they have to comply with all federal, state, and local permits that might be applicable to this. So that MEPA concern is going to be built in to the standard conditions. But what I typically do is, as I start drafting, I share a draft of that decision with counsel for the applicant, so that if there are issues that are going to be potential issues for an appeal, I can have a further discussion with the board. They can't, but we can have a further discussion as you go through your deliberations and see.
and that's after the May 29th period, is that right?
At this point, it would be. I mean, I don't see how, if we're not having another meeting till somewhere like around May 21st, I don't see how we're having any deliberations or sharing a draft decision much before the 29th. Now, if you could fit another meeting in between now and the 21st, where there could be further discussion of waivers, then yeah, maybe I could provide some sort of a draft at a subsequent meeting before the 29th, where we could start to have some more substantive discussion.
But you need 2 weeks, right, to plan, to post?
No, we only need 2
No,
days.
just 2 days,
Oh, only 2 days.
just 48 hours.
Yes, but so
Okay.
You're asking Mr. Driscoll to perform a expeditious review of our drainage, resubmit drainage calculations. Would it also, would it make the board feel more comfortable with the whole Title V issue if your own consultant, GEI, reviewed the new plans with respect to your concerns, as well as Mr. Dillon's response to Mr. Horsley?
Now, that you raised an interesting point, because as we sit here tonight, GEI is, not currently, has not really reviewed. They did talk to us preliminarily when they heard about Mr. Horsley's report, but they did not issue any formal rebuttal or opinion on it. We did have a Zoom, Mr. Driscoll and I did attend a Zoom conference. Was that the one you attended, Carolyn?
I did.
Okay, so yes.
But now the plans have been revised.
That's revised.
To
So,
address the
So-
concerns.
yes, I mean, now, that is not impossible, but I don't know GEI's timeframe, and also, they're also owed for their outstanding works to date, which I believe, what was the invoice? 13,800? That needs to be paid, I think, before they'll lift a finger on any new request. And so, yeah, so the 53G account needs to be, replenished, by the way. So anyway, so, I mean, I guess that is an option, but we're kind of short on time here, so.
We have an invoice? We never received an
Mr.
invoice.
Chairman, what's the balance on the 53G
I think it
account?
would be advisable,
To have him do
yeah.
that.
Okay.
I don't believe we received an invoice.
We'll pay it.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, all right, so anyway, so I want to bring this up at some point, but the outstanding invoices presently run to about, I want to say $15,000, Greg?
Somewhere around there.
All right, so anyway, so essentially, and I'll make sure to give you guys, all the invoices that have been paid and all the amounts that you've seen, so it's not like didn't know where your money was going. But anyway, but we do have an arrearage of approximately, there's some money in the account that needs to be allocated, but after that, I think it's somewhere in the $14,000 to $15,000 range. And most of it's owed to GEI, some of it's owed to Mr. Driscoll's firm, but most of it's owed to GEI, so that needs to be addressed. if we want to go forward and ask GEI to comment upon the new proposal.
I don't,
Mr. Chairman, we have not received an invoice, we have not received the accounting of the 53G account.
We'll pay it, though.
We've vented,
I'll get it to you guys, don't worry, you'll have it, you'll have all the
We should
invoices.
have had it already, but, yeah, so we need that in order to figure out what's going on
Right, fair enough.
financially.
I'll email you guys that tomorrow or so, so you will have, exactly who was paid, how much, and when.
But I think that comes from, well, it does make a difference, I guess, who it comes from. Typically, it comes from the town accountant, that's,
It does, I do have her reports, I don't think, did I, hold on for one moment, please. Did I put them in my packet here? If I did, I'd give it to you, but I don't, she did give me the printout this morning, but I didn't bring it with me, I'm sorry about that, but I do have it scanned, so I can
so
send
if you
it.
could forward that to council and he'll
Yeah.
share it with the team.
I'll forward that, we do have the invoices, I'll make sure you guys have everything that you need, if, so that I think it's only fair for that. All right, so anyway, so yes, I think that is I think that is having GEI come back for one final time to review it, if so we can get that out of the way, but they will want their invoice paid, I'm sure. But anyway, so, all right, so, you think we need to make a motion on that, or just simply,
I think if you could just, through Mr. Driscoll, coordinate that with GEI,
Yeah,
recognizing the clock is ticking.
all right,
Yeah, I'll get in touch with them tomorrow, and then, as you already said, the current scope has already been exhausted, so they will have more. I think the last quote they gave verbally was like 5,000 to do another review.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's still valid or not, but
all right, so essentially, you generally have an idea of what's going to be required here, but anyway, again, I'll send you make sure you get the invoices tomorrow. Invoices. All right, so do we want to talk about scheduling a next meeting for, whatever we don't get done tonight for waiver review, to continue on with waiver review for that, and again, at the same time, allow the various parties who want to consider the hydrogeology report more time to do that, and we'll schedule a second. So essentially, I see two more meetings at least in our future. One for waiver review, one for hydrogeo, and probably a third meeting for final review.
Right.
All right, so we got, okay, so essentially, we're going to have one meeting a week, every week this month.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, that's not including the dog kennel lady.
That was a different one.
So I don't think I had that on, I should be at that, right?
No, you
Or is
don't need to
that-
be- no,
I
you
don't
need to be
need
on
to.
hers.
Okay,
It's also not gonna get this done.
so we could do, I only need 2 days to post that.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
So, anyway, so we can do, so essentially, we can do, we can't do anything until next Wednesday, because the town clerk, unless you
Town
want,
meeting is 13.
oh, that's right, we can't do
Oh,
13.
you've got town meeting, too.
What about the 12th? Could we do the 12th or the?
I think we can, if, normally, the town clerk isn't open on Friday, but if I emailed her and say, hey, we have sort of like a pseudo emergency here, can you get this posted?
Get it in the paper?
All right, so
So like Tuesday or Thursday?
Thursday would probably be better.
The 14th?
Yeah, because isn't your town meeting on the 13th?
Yeah, it's on the 13th, on a
Okay.
Wednesday, so if the 14th is a Thursday, we can do that.
So would you be putting something before that? Or are we just like recommendations or?
So anyway, so it seems like
I
to
think-
me that,
I think you need to hear the waivers.
And that's what this next meeting will be.
I feel
for
like
later.
the next
Thursday, the
meeting will be
14th, the
waivers and then
21st, and the
hydrogeo
28th might be the,
follow-up.
essential.
Three in a row, Thursday.
Yeah, it's like keeping our
I just
Thursdays
feel like
open.
we still need to review things.
We only have one on the 20th.
We're gonna talk and share and
Okay.
discuss it.
All right, so let's see, so if you had anything planned for Thursdays this month?
I can do this. The 14th?
Yeah, so essentially, my thought is, essentially, we have 3 Thursdays left in the month, the
Okay.
14th, the 21st, and the 28th.
Okay.
Do you have any issue with those falling?
I don't think so.
I have a conflict on the 21st, but the 14th and the 28th I
I
can
can do
do.
the 21st, but
Okay.
unless we switch it to Wednesday that night.
25th is a Monday. Is it-
Someone else had a
25th
conflict.
is Memorial
21st is
Day.
a Thursday.
Sorry?
No, I
Just saying
said,
25th is Memorial Day.
well, I was just
Somebody was
thinking, what if we
mentioning
did the 20th or the 19th?
29th is the day last.
29th, so we can meet the week of the 25th.
All right, so,
Or you back the 25th?
okay, all right, so I've got, all right, so I got,
So
Well,
Mr.
the
Dillon's
18th.
not back until the 21st, though.
You're back the
so
25th.
we can't do,
I wouldn't
I know,
be on the-
Friday, can we, is anyone, is Friday's gonna be impossible for anybody?
have to come back.
Well, then,
Yeah.
oh, the week.
That's leading into Memorial Day weekend. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah,
people have something else, unless you were planning during the day.
Or when?
On the 22nd,
In the
the
morning?
Friday before Memorial Day?
In the morning?
Well, they don't want, you don't want to do it Friday.
I can do it, I'm fine.
Why not the 21st? I'm confused.
Oh, because she had a conflict.
I have a
Oh, you
conflict the
do?
night of the
Oh.
21st. Yeah, I have another 40B.
Could you do earlier on the 21st? I mean, I could do earlier afternoon.
We could do it in the afternoon.
The 22nd's a little
I
crazy.
can do it
for
anytime.
me.
I can be here.
We could do it in the afternoon,
And-
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
wondering, like,
21st.
could we do like 3?
3 o'clock.
Like 3?
I have to be in North Andover at 7.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be tough. Do you want to do it earlier in the day on the 21st?
I'm
I can-
actually pretty open.
I
on
can
the
do it
20th.
earlier, yep.
I could do earlier.
How about noon? Anyone have a problem
I
with
could
noon?
do it.
I could do it that time.
Okay, all right.
Bring us in.
Okay, all right, so,
Well, let's do that then.
So that would be the hydro-geo discussion? Is
Yeah.
that,
Oh, instead of, because the hydro-geo, when we're gonna, the waiver's next week and this is the following week.
right.
okay, and now, if everyone could cast their eyes to the final week, which is 5/28, 5/27. Does anyone have an issue with those dates?
So I can cancel
Divided by
this.
8 hours.
I'm not charging it.
No,
Hold on, let me
they
just,
charge people above.
which one was that?
Let's see, there's 5/28, if not 5/27.
Okay.
No,
I'm open either of those.
the guy behind me's there.
So that'd be good.
Either
We're
of those
doing
are
in the middle of
fine,
the
too.
day. That works for you, okay, huh?
Yeah.
I like the idea of the middle of the day.
May 27th and 28th open for you folks, too?
The
Oh,
27th?
for another meeting, you say?
Yeah.
Like a
Second
final,
Like
right?
I
final-
think
final
actually
review.
what hopefully would be the
Mr.
final. Because I think, do you want to
Mr.
do
Dillon is
the,
not available on the 28th. but-
no, I think we're locking him for the 21st
Yeah,
at
I'm
noon.
definitely, I could be available by remotely on the 27th or 28th.
But I think we
No need
we can
behind
hear
it.
from you we would like to hear from you on the 21st, so.
Okay. The 27th and 28th are okay with us.
All right, so, okay, all right, so I think, so let me announce the plan, the meeting plan for the rest of the month, okay? So that everyone is on the same page, and so that everyone, who can hear the recording knows what we plan to do, all right? So on May 14th at 6:30, we're going to have a further waiver review hearing.
What?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, May 14th?
Yes,
May 14th, so that's next Thursday.
Yeah.
We, okay, I thought we were talking about the 21st.
We'll get there. All right, so, anyway,
So this is going to be waivers.
yeah, there's gonna be waivers, all right? May 21st, that's gonna be the hydrogeo, experts can opine
Middle of the day.
on that date. And that's gonna be at 12 noon, so that's gonna be earlier than we usually do.
That's good before.
And then finally, on May 28th at 6:30, we're gonna have our final review.
Yeah, both Mr. McKenzie and I have another 40B in Duxbury.
On the
Are you
28th?
involved
On the
On the 14th, are you involved in that one?
No, it must be Amy.
Okay, because we have a 40B hearing in Duxbury with the Duxbury ZBA on that.
Okay.
So we do the 27th?
Oh, wait, you were talking about the 14th, right?
Yes,
Okay.
14th, three of us are unavailable.
14th early in the day,
I
maybe.
thought we were talking about the 21st and the following week. That's the two. That's what I thought we were talking about.
We,
I don't
I
know
think
where the
we're
14th
all
came from.
available on the 21st, the 27th, and the 28th, if we could do those 3 dates.
I'm-
14th in the morning.
I have a contempt trial in Plymouth Superior Court all day with Plymouth.
Okay. Yeah, you're unavailable for that day. All right, so, all right, so you guys are unavailable on the 14th, essentially, for what I say.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so,
And we can't do the 13th.
can't do the 13th as a town meeting. When else can you guys be made?
5/21, 5/27, and 5/28 we can do.
All right, so in that case, then the next meeting we would have is 5/21,
Yeah, and that'll be the hydro.
the hydro, all right, and then 5/27, 5/28, that will essentially be review and finish. That's,
Reviews and finish, right,
all right.
okay.
Kind of be nice to have them back to back.
At least our minds will be fresh on the subject matter.
So we're saying,
27th and 28th.
Okay.
Okay.
so we have the 21st in the day, and then the 27th and 28th at 6:30, correct?
Yes, that's what I said. Okay. All right, so let me, all right, so let me try this again, so that, everybody knows what we plan to do. So, forget what I said, 2 minutes ago. All right, all right, so anyway, so our next meeting is gonna be on 5/21. We're going to hear, any further, comment on hydro-geo, and if the fire chief has anything the fire captain has anything he wishes to, we need to discuss about whatever comments he has, we'll do that at that time. So that meeting is gonna be held at 12 o'clock noon in this room, which is, again, different from our normal time. Yes?
If GI is going to be present, then they would have to be joining remotely.
Oh,
But can we zoom them in?
Where are they, Greg, Rhode Island?
Should we do it
Connecticut.
virtual?
Connecticut, right?
Connecticut.
Oh, what if we did virtual?
Can we zoom them in?
Boy,
all right, so now, all right, so with the Zoom, now, there are two ways of doing that. The last time was, again,
get them on the
it
phone.
resulted in me hosting the meeting. It was not exactly an experience I wish to repeat, but obviously,
I
I'm gonna
haven't
make some.
had.
We had
I could
GEI
host
on speakerphone.
Yeah, there you go.
Would that, is that feasible in terms of, if they need to point out something on the plan or something? How do they manage that?
I would think that they could give
We could do it by
somebody.
Zoom.
Okay,
I think.
then we would need to project them onto the screen. Well, we can do that. I mean, you can project
Share-
that. Why
you
can't I
share the
project?
screen on a Zoom, right?
Yes, so essentially, I could hook up to the projector,
You could
pump
do
them, put them up on the screen, and,
Then they could share their screen, right? Can't they share the screen?
yeah, they can share the screen.
Give them permission.
And and the other thing I could probably do is I could point my laptop to whoever they need to, if they want to talk to somebody in person or something like that. So I guess that would work.
Try that one.
So it'll be in person.
All right, so in person with the exception of GEI for Zoom.
And that's the one in the 14th,
Now,
correct?
do you have to post it that
No,
way?
21st.
21st.
I think we do have to indicate that it'll be
Do it
hybrid.
as a hybrid.
All right, so.
So this is the 21st at 12.
All right, so today's the 7th, and so meeting exactly in 2 weeks' time minus however many hours that is.
And that one's at 12.
That one's at 12. All right, and so everyone who's not going to be on the Zoom has to be here.
And then the 27th and the 28th at
27th,
6:30 here.
At 6:30, yeah, both at 6:30. That's where we're going to do the further and final review, and hopefully at the end of the 28th, we'll have all the votes in on the comprehensive permit, and then we can move on to the decision review process. All right, so, all right, okay, so that's the plan. Does anyone have a question about the plan? Okay, good.
We have to do, so when we deliberate, we can meet another time to deliberate, is what you're saying, right? Or do we
We
deliberate
have
right
another
then?
40 days.
Okay,
I mean, you still have to deliberate in the context of a public meeting.
okay,
Where we discuss, what the decision is, how it's going to read.
okay.
Um,
So we would discuss it, it would be public, but nobody else can jump in?
Correct.
It's just us, okay.
Correct.
Although, I think the developer, you know,
Points of clarification could be made during that deliberation period.
No new information,
Pardon?
but no new information.
so,
So yes.
so they can say, you know, this paragraph doesn't seem to conform with.
If we put something in that said it was a 50-foot setback and it was supposed to be 15, yes, they can
All right.
jump in to correct that.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
But no new information.
no new information.
Okay. So technically, the public hearing closes on the 20th.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so anyway, so why don't we take a vote now on this, on the new scheduling, so that we have that, you know, in the record, and everybody's agreed upon it, okay?
And the 14th is still waivers.
No,
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no, we're not doing anything on
No
the
14th.
essentially, it's like, you and I.
That's on the 21st
Wednesdays and
instead.
Thursdays, doing ZBA stuff, but next week.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so I move that we schedule the next hearings as I previously indicated, the 21st to 12 PM, a hybrid, the 27th and the 28th in person, the 21st to review hydro-geo and fire comments, and the 20th, the 27th and the 28th for waiver review and decision-making. All right, do I have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'll get out the notice for that.
So next week, nothing.
Yeah, next week, nothing. Okay, so now,
Chief.
all right, so get that out of the way. Now, I think we can review any waivers that I think that that aren't contingent upon whatever information we might receive from now to then.
Right, so you had a whole slew of waivers requested from the subdivision regulations. That might be
Okay.
worth
That we can
visiting.
talk now.
Right.
Okay, let's see, I had,
K and P waivers. Spring, remember that?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to give you a call now.
okay, so,
Yeah, yeah, this is where he's going to. Oh, I know exactly.
So we haven't covered the wetlands protection bylaw. I don't know if you want to wait, because we were kind of you were sort of thinking that was somewhat related to the hydro-geo aspects.
okay. All right.
But then we've got Chapter 350, the subdivision regulations, where there are a number of waivers that have been requested.
Okay. All right, so I think we probably best to start with the subdivision regs. Let's see, now, the most recent,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may? The way I like to sometimes, we need to go over the waivers. However, in our request, I believe we had indicated some language that says we're only asking for the waivers that are necessary in order to complete the plans as approved. So to me, the plans are sort of the waiver, because sometimes we could have missed something. I mean, it's still, we still need to go over the waivers, but that's sort of a catch-all that I typically would like to have in the decision.
Okay. Yes, sir.
That would be up to the board to decide. Because that's how Brad prepares the kind of the waiver list is based on the plans.
Yes, it should be,
And
but
some
we haven't even discussed the subdivision
waivers right here,
waivers yet.
right?
We have reviewed the others.
No, I'm not sure if that's the most current list or not.
Okay.
Let's see, if you want,
I can follow.
Emails.
Or does he have?
It was revised February 2nd, 2026.
okay, all right, so, yeah, he attended.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. This says 2/2/26, so it should be.
But yours doesn't have the highlights, does it?
Yeah, I don't know why.
He sent, Brad sent us an email today
Attaching that same copy,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
with some highlights. so-
I didn't think that was.
So
that was.
that's the correct one that's up on the screen.
I gave you a copy of that.
I can follow it there, but I
Yeah, I
just.
got
That's the most recent one with their.
So was it emailed today too?
Yeah,
Is this?
yeah, look for McKen's, or maybe, which email did he use? Did he use your other?
You know
email?
what? Sometimes you guys send it to my business one, but,
He sent it to Dr. Suzanne.
okay. I can open that.
Because
So it's not in this
Back and
list
forth.
here, right? No.
No, it'll be a different email, because that came from, is that you, Dr. J?
Yeah. Yeah.
You did send it, so,
Was I on there?
let's see.
Would you, if you want to just send it, forward it to
Yeah.
my other email.
Okay, I can do that, just give me a minute.
Thank you. Sorry.
Which one should I forward it to?
Due to the Estafarian one. Just because I have a file there for all my ZBA stuff, so I end up having to forward it anyway. Thank you.
Because the local bylaw doesn't allow.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
It should be the Word document.
Yep, right here, one of the, well, you have 4 attachments. So which one?
It would be the docx file.
Thank you.
Okay, so, let's see.
This is all a little confusing anyway, so. Yeah, this is good. All right, I got that
Okay, so, all right,
updated.
so
Thank you.
All right, so section 350 subdivision regulations.
So you've got to scroll through about 5 or 6 pages, Dave, to get to chapter 350.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Which
It starts at the bottom of page 7. Right there, yep.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, the first,
Typically, we do 1 in 40, but it'd also be 11 by 17s for ease of reference sometimes on the plans.
What are we talking,
I'll put the waiver up on the board.
oh, that's,
Up on top right here.
yeah.
well,
1 in 40 is usually they want this one.
So just vote on each one?
Or you can vote them as a slate, but do you want to go through them one by one and see if there's any questions or
Yeah, I
comments?
think we should.
It's just this.
Well, for the site drawings, I mean.
yeah. Well,
Okay, so all right, so someone, all right, so 1 to 40 versus 1 to 60 plan scale. What's,
then I didn't want any, I couldn't get it up to you guys, so I didn't think you said it.
That's pretty typical, 140.
Yes.
Yeah.
all right,
So typically on the site, the contractors, the site contractors, everybody else is used to looking at the large plans of 1 in 40.
is that the size?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
No, we're at 1 in, so we can show the whole street on one sheet, we're at 1 in 60, we're asking for the waiver.
Oh, all right, I
The
see.
requirement is 1 in 40, we're okay with the condition.
Okay.
Could I ask, with respect to JDE's comment about granting the waiver at least for the 40B plans, but when it comes to the construction plan set, adhering to the 1 in 40? Is that possible, or you want a waiver?
I think we'd like the waiver for the 1 in 60, but for the actual site plans for the lots, there'd be 1 in 40.
So the plans you'll be submitting, say, to the building department for
1 in
construction
40.
will be 1 in 40?
Correct, or maybe even 1 in 20, so, but let's say no smaller than 1 in 40,
All right,
meaning there could be 1 in 30, 1 in 20, you know.
all right, so I think, we could adopt that suggestion by granting it in part and denying it in part, I think. Is that the proper verbiage to use?
Partial waiver.
Oh, partial waiver.
Partial waiver.
Yeah, what I was suggesting was 1 in 40 for the roadway plans, the profiles, and all that stuff.
I'm sorry, you
Not
would,
just building permit plot plans that Brad was talking about, I was talking about the roadway plans and profiles. So the construction plans that the contractor used to build.
For the construction plan. Does that make sense to you guys?
Well, 1 and 40 is a little harder to read because you're not looking at,
Well, he wants 1 and 60, so that's even harder to read. It's even smaller.
well, no, let's say, but at least 1 and 60, you can see the entire, whole section of the site, some of it. Otherwise, you got your page breaks and your
Yeah.
match lines and all that business, but doesn't make a difference to us.
Mr. Paczynski is a road builder, so if he's,
1 in 40 works for me.
I don't know, 140, 160, whatever.
Yeah, that reads them.
Okay.
All right, so I would suggest that we would grant that waiver only to the extent that, but for the site plan, the roadway plan, and handle it that way. Anything else? Okay, all right, so percolation tests is the next part of this section. Let's see. Okay, all right. All right, ZBA can impose condition requiring perk tests satisfactory to and observed by BOH, be conducted and include, suggested condition below. All right. Okay, all right, so obviously, that it has to be, the test is designed in accordance with Title V. Obviously, that's pretty much an inherent requirement. So anyway, so I think with the comments that have been highlighted, that if we essentially incorporate those comments into the waiver, then I think that should be acceptable.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so essentially,
We're okay with the KP comments.
so as I understand it, for this part of it, the Board of Health will still have to witness the perk test, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay, what else do we have to deal with on this, before we get to the next section? Anything?
The next thing is the environmental impact assessment that they're seeking an exception from, relative to wildlife, historical sites, open space, et cetera.
Okay, and that's something that we're imposing through our own bylaw, that the consideration of the preservation and all that stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
this is all coming from your subdivision regulations.
All right. All right, okay.
And much of this, if I may, surface water, groundwater, I don't think anyone has identified any wildlife or historical sites here. Hydrogeology, all that, you actually have that information.
Now, what about anything what about any outstanding issues that we've been talking about earlier this evening? Would that impact this waiver request, or no?
As I understand this requirement, these are part of the things that have to be included. Like, they're looking to not have to provide an environmental impact assessment, yet they've still proven to you that they meet DEP stormwater standards, for example.
All right.
And you've had the hydrogeology assessment that's been done. If we were aware of, say, some sort of, wildlife or archaeological aspect, then maybe we would want some further study to be done. But nothing has been revealed so far in these hearings as to that.
And let's say, for example, there was a burial ground, I think it probably would have been revealed by now.
And if they do discover something like that, they are required by state law to stop anyway.
Yes.
And to take the appropriate steps. So that doesn't change this.
So, right, so I don't see, there's, yeah, as you just said, there are issues here that may be covered by other, regulations. For example, if they need to test the, the percolation test, that may, whatever we decide for this part doesn't necessarily mean that they get a free pass if their perk test doesn't pass or their water's contaminated. All right, so, anyway, so with that, I don't see any issue with granting this part of the waiver exemption. Let's see, but I just want to take a look. Okay.
Every third lot.
I do appreciate his comment, number 27 on that,
I was just looking at it.
and I think that is appropriate to add into the waiver.
So who wrote those? Was
I
that
think
their attorney?
No, this is
Okay.
coming from JDE.
JDE.
Your
Oh.
peer review consultant.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to adopt those two. I was just reading.
All right, so,
Great. Is that an issue for them, or are we?
okay, all right, so I think that covers the first box on the subdivision regulations.
Yep.
All right, so let's go on to the next one, which says, location and alignment, all reverse curves shall be separated by a tangent at least 100 feet long. And they say, we want an exemption because we're providing 24 feet, and that's pretty much for fire truck access. Now, I would, I would suggest preliminarily, since, there is a revision to the plan.
Not in the roadway.
Okay, this is just down with the roadway. Okay, all right, then. All right, well, the fire chief has already had his say on the roadway, and that's not changed.
The roadway has not changed.
All right, then.
Okay.
All right, then
And is the berm on both sides of the road?
Yes.
Okay.
and that's that 1 foot sort of paved slope.
12-inch Cape Cod, yeah,
Okay.
1 foot.
But it's kind of like a paved slope that kind of like,
You could drive.
yeah, okay. Yes, Mr. Anderson?
So are there driveways? There's no new side streets, it's just driveways?
Correct. That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
And the fire chief will get back to us with any issue with the driveways or the reconfigured buildings at the next meeting. All right, so anyway, so that, I think, I think we can grant them that exemption. Okay, so that goes to width, minimum of right-of-way should be 50 feet, cross-section, whatever that, you can all read that for yourselves, all right. It says the exemption, 40-foot right-of-way, 24-foot wide access, 4-foot wide bituminous concrete, and you just talked about the berm, all right, and when I think someone asked you whether on both sides of the roadway, you said yes. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, all right, and the no parking, and the no parking signs, we discussed that too, right?
Yes.
You're gonna have the no parking signs. I think we agreed in the past, that there will be some no parking signs on there?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, with that, then I think we can approve that exemption. All right, so, and if anyone, oh, by the way, my fellow board members, if anyone think I'm going too hastily, just don't hesitate to tell me, hey, stop. Okay, so next one is grade, all right? Grade shall not be less than 1%, 6%, 8%, okay, intersection grades, not, the 2% reduced to 100 feet.
Now, the comments under the grade say that neither one is necessary, since it meets the necessary requirements.
All right, so we can skip over that.
So this one is no longer necessary.
All right. Okay.
And that hasn't changed by virtue of the revised plan, correct?
No,
Okay.
and the roadway design has not changed at all.
At all.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next one, dead-end streets. Again, that hasn't changed. One it says, dead-end streets typically are not supposed to be more than 500 feet, but this one is going to be 2780 feet. And it said, it seems that the way that the street is appropriate based on what the fire chief said. So I don't see, I feel like we do have some developments in town that have cul-de-sacs. Are they all within 500 feet?
Mr. Chair, did we discuss number 3, the 1% within 50 feet of the beginning of the intersection? Did we skip over that one?
I think I mentioned it, but I think that whole section was no longer.
We agree that number 1 and under 350-44C, we agreed that 1 and 3 can be removed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so,
Yes.
so I think on to the dead-end streets bit. I could have sworn there are some that are more than 500 feet.
Side of the section of the street, the center of the turn.
I assume that means like those streets like Pope's Farm Road and Granville Baker Way that have like, the cul-de-sac at the end of them.
Yeah, they come in and there's.
Yeah, there's a loop and you go out.
Right. But no longer than 500 feet. Dead end. See, is this, they want the exemption here for like 1,200 feet, like 2,000.
Yeah, so, but,
2,200 feet.
I mean, it's recommended, and, I think that's probably, the idea behind that is probably for fire truck access. Because obviously you don't want to have the fire truck going so far down a dead-end street, there's only one way in and out of there. But, I think we've already covered that in other,
Sure, yeah.
so anyway, so I don't see a problem with granting that. And besides, there was also the right-of-way that was, identified as potentially being a second way of ingress to the development. So with that, I'm prepared to, I think we can exempt that. Oh, there's also more, sorry, there's more to this. Let's not be too, so,
Dead street shall not serve for frontage.
all right, well,
60 dwellings opposed.
okay, all right, so it's not going to be an island, as I understand it.
Right.
All right, so, again, I don't see any issues here on the dead-end street issue.
Right.
Okay, street cross-section, location of roadway to conform with figure 4, all right, 50-foot right-of-way, 20-foot wide access roadway, and,
No sidewalk.
yeah,
We just have the Cape Cod berm.
so essentially, it's like, as I understand it, the lawn's going to go pretty much to the berm, and then you're going to have the street proper. All right.
Mr. Chair, on this cross-section one, can I ask, they're looking for a waiver from the cover over the drain pipes. Do we have an estimate as to what the cover would be?
Oh, yes. In one location, it's 1.5 feet near drain manhole number 7. And Greg can verify that. So
Is that the most narrow, least amount of cover, so to speak? Everything will be greater than that?
Yes.
Okay.
In the pipe, my own notes indicate that we have, from the manufacturer, that it's 1 foot of cover is required, you can go down to 1 foot of cover, so. Per ASHTO.
Okay. But in any event, it will have no pipe will have less than 1.5 foot of cover.
Correct.
All right. So it's not, so it seems like we should, grant that except for, for that proviso is that the 1.5 foot cover for the drain pipe. All right, so,
Yep.
all right, so that takes, I think that takes care of the street cross-section, all right. So, but before I do, the drain pipe, is that the manhole cover, or is that a more of a horizontal outlet? I'm having trouble picturing this in my head.
It's a pipe in the ground,
yeah.
underground. It's the depth, this is the pipe It's the distance from the top of the pipe to the finished grade.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right, I get you. Now, what's the circumference of this pipe?
12-inch,
Okay.
12 or 15, either one you are.
Okay, so,
I mean, that's the diameter.
all right, that's the diameter. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't need you to calculate pi in your head. But, all right, so anyways, okay, now I understand what you,
Pi r.
all right, so, anyway, so, all right, now I understand what you're getting at. I just had trouble envisioning it. So essentially, it's like when you pull up the pavement, right? You see like all these little small little things on the ground, and and you have to maneuver around them. I think I know what you're getting at. All right, so anyway, so you get, all right, so 1.5, 1 foot 6 inches. All right, okay, so that takes care of that. All right, so pedestrian ways is next.
And so this would just be for a sidewalk only on one side of the street,
Okay.
as opposed to both.
All right, and what side is that? Is that the northeast or the southwest side?
Do you know what side of the street the sidewalk is on? Is it on the northwest or the southeast?
Southeast,
It's southeast?
That's right.
bottom page.
Okay, I see it. It's the southeast side. This is the sidewalk here. Yeah, there's one on the south.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's-
Oh, geez.
all right, so, okay.
I didn't even know they were, I didn't catch that.
I'd be happy if they were on both sides, but we have to make do.
A second, because we hadn't talked about it.
All right, so can anyone remind me what the issue was of having a sidewalk on both sides of the street?
Well, it's not required, usually it's not required. In a lot of towns, subdivision rules and regs, I mean, it's for a residential project,
All right,
not a lot of traffic.
okay, but there was no special consideration here that we had to consider.
Would it have been for the fire department access for the trucks?
Do you have a sidewalk on both sides? No.
No,
No, because they only have like, a 1 foot, like a very small berm, they could drive on the grass if they had to.
we're still providing a 24-foot wide roadway with a 12-inch berm on each side.
Inside,
Okay.
26-foot total.
Yeah.
All right. All right, then I guess, that seems to be approvable. All right, let's see, now next, disposal of surface water, all right.
It looks like they've already complied with it, so.
All right, so it seems like there's a couple of numbers and letters here, all right. It looks like they're all recommended or otherwise complied with. Let's see, so 2, it says drainage system based on aluminum pack design. It says computation of runoff, that appears to be no longer an issue. Let's see, now, when we approve these waivers, right, and we have here the middle column that says, this is what, the applicant has requested this to waive from this section, and this is what we're gonna do, and when we say recommended approval of waiver, that means that we approve it based on their representation, right? So if they say, in such as C, it's such as high-density polyethylene drain pipe will be used, that's part of the waiver condition, is that right?
Yes.
All right. So it's not like I'm just simply giving them a blank check based on, things that they suggest, unless they
No.
otherwise say
No.
so. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I don't see any other issues with this section, so I think we can, follow the recommendations and move on to the next.
I have a question.
Yes?
As far as catch basins, drainage, how close is Ricketts Pond to this? I mean, it is rare and endangered red-bellied turtle habitat historically. So this is what I'm concerned with, because, you know, we have these media reviews and everything else for a reason. And, you know, every single neighbor in that area who's on that pond can testify that there's Plymouth red-bellied turtles in that pond. So I want to know how close that pond is to all this hardscape, with all the stormwater pollution coming off those roofs and hardscapes. I want to know how close it is to that pond, which we need to be protecting.
It's,
Stormwater's already been reviewed.
it's,
That's all been reviewed, the
could
stormwater
be,
management
could
plan.
be
is
800 to
totally-
1,000
I asked a
feet.
question, you know.
I'm not certain, I don't have Ricketts Pond on this plan, but it's several hundred feet away, and we're complying with all the water quality standards under the state stormwater management regulations, so it should not be a concern.
Do the stormwater regulations encompass protected species protection as, oh, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Rebecca Lipton?
All right, what Ms. Lipton recommended about the turtles?
You're asking me if the
Yeah.
stormwater regs contemplate protecting a risk?
Yes, protected species. Do they have anything to say about that?
No.
No.
Okay. So,
Well, that was their habitat, that, you know, that big sandy hill, that has been removed, millions of dollars worth of sand, that has been removed. That was where they lay eggs. That's their habitat, and then they go back in the water.
I'm not sure what agency handles that.
There's
Which
the
wildland-
endangered species. Did
Natural
you
heritage.
submit that through,
Natural
as part of the
heritage.
application, though?
It's not listed with the state
It's not.
Yes, it is,
as a priority or
natural
estimated
heritage.
habitat.
Just because nobody, it's like vernal pools. If you don't register them, doesn't mean they're not there. You have to register them for it to be noted. Every single person that lives on that pond will tell you there's Plymouth red, they have pictures.
Then they're not endangered.
But to your point, Mr. Chairman, it's a state agency. It's like the National Heritage of Endangered Species Act, you know, that would review those aspects.
So how does anyone know how that review is initiated? It doesn't sound like
The
it's,
site has to be listed in the atlas, mapped in the atlas as a priority or estimated habitat. And it's not. Neither is Ricketts Pond.
Maybe you should go visit the neighbors and talk to them.
anyway.
They have to be certified.
Yes, I think that's my understanding is, all right, so anyway, so now regarding this, all right, so,
But it is a protected species.
okay. All right, so we were on sidewalks and bikeways, and I think, you know, again,
I'm
that's,
sorry, I lost track, Mr. Chair. Did you
we're
indicate
on
that
15.
355-3B is, you're okay with that entire section? Is that what we?
yes, unless
Yes.
anyone has any issues with that, then, and I'm hearing none, then yes, we can go on to sidewalks and bikeways, and I think, again, that is an issue about
Two sidewalks.
two sidewalks, again, we've already addressed that. Again, and so I think that's already been addressed, so we can move on to the next section. Let's see, sidewalk and bikeway design standards, okay. I don't think I'm not sure if that's relevant, because if there's no bikeways proposed, they don't have to meet any standard. Unless I'm missing something here.
No, I think the subdivision regs call for some sort of, they call for sidewalks and probably in some cases also call for a bikeway to be designated. And the point is, this is not going to have either, is only going to have one sidewalk and no bikeway.
Okay. I didn't know our subdivision regs required a bikeway. if
Maybe
they,
they just require signs if you have a bikeway, maybe that's all it is.
okay, well,
I think if you're proposing a bikeway, then it has to be designed in accordance with the standards,
Yeah.
but we're not.
But if you're not,
so I think that,
Bikeway shall be considered as separate from sidewalks and should be located according to the planning board recommendations.
considered
guess
but
if
not
you-
required,
I
right?
guess if you grant the exemption to not include them, then B does not apply.
Apply.
Because you're not designing them, you don't have to design them.
yes, unless someone suggests that the subdivision plans requires a bikeway, I think this section is not applicable to this project.
We just wanted to be all-inclusive, just in case there was a different interpretation,
Okay, because, 4 feet wide, I'm sure someone could ride their bike along that 4 feet wide, pathway that, on the sidewalk. And I guess to the extent that that could be considered a bikeway, perhaps the exemption would be appropriate. So if that's the potential theory, then I'm comfortable with granting that and moving on. All right, so next one is curbing and berms, general, okay, we're on the next page, I think.
Oh, okay.
All right, so this pretty much says that most of these issues are be addressed by the 12-inch Cape Cod berm on the sides of the streets. And that seems to be appropriate for this plan, as I can see. And unless anyone has any further questions, I think we can move on and recommend this one too.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Okay, the next one is on traditional drain systems. Let's see, berms required. All right, it seems like if there's an exemption required, it seems to be very minimal from the plan, because it says Cape Cod berms requirement, Cape Cod berm shall be.
Just a small size one.
All right. Does this section require, generally require something wider than?
Yes,
Okay,
18-inch.
Oh, okay, I see.
4-inch reveal.
all right. Okay, so it's pretty close. Again, unless anyone has an objection, I think we can grant that and move on. Okay. Monuments, okay, all right, so. Okay, and they proposed to use cement concrete bounds. All right, so. Okay, all right. So this is essentially staking out this roadway from what I'm reading, more or less.
We're just proposing a different way of doing it.
Okay.
Well, we're proposing cement concrete, more specifically, this just says monuments. Actually, it says 5-inch reinforced concrete granite posts. What we're suggesting is cement concrete bounds are gonna be at all the changes in curvature of the roadway. But 5.8 indicates or suggests that where in the opinion of the planning board, permanent monuments are necessary, so it kind of leaves the door open for monumentation to be placed in other locations other than the changing curvature of the roadway. So we're saying, we're just gonna put them in to demarcate the roadway.
So how do you plan on demarcating the lot lines, or is that not
We
necessary?
say right here, iron pins.
Okay.
Fine, fine.
Again, this does not seem an unreasonable request to me, so, if the surveyor's comfortable with it, then again, it's your property, not ours, so.
Extended.
I'm sorry? All right, so then, all right, then I think we can move on with and not have to worry about that exemption. All right, street trees and stone walls. All right, so it sounds like, you know,
I like his recommendation.
okay. Okay. Okay, so it seems like the only real exemption from this requirement requested is all trees shall be planted within the right-of-way distance not to exceed 30 feet. You want to extend that to 50 feet, if I'm reading that correctly, and correct me if I'm not. And, you know, and as Suzanne says, you know, try to preserve the existing trees and the final plant, you know, the rest landscaping lands. I mean, to the extent there are trees on there that,
There aren't any trees
There aren't
proposed to be
any.
preserved, though, are there?
Building
I
to
don't think there are any trees on that part of the, they want to build on, so.
But he's saying to consider adding some landscaping.
The problem is, I don't think the subdivision rules are even legally allowed to regulate landscaping on a lot, so may have been issued.
Street trees are always in there, though.
We don't have any problem with the
No,
street trees.
no, but the section applies
Because the
to
street trees
street
and-
trees and stone walls, not individual lots.
Right.
Correct.
However, the board should consider requiring a typical residential.
I think your plan does show some idea of some street trees being planted.
Yes,
Yeah, we're
it
gonna plant
does.
street trees.
Yep. Just not the distance, just further
50 feet.
apart than the subdivision
Okay.
regs would call for.
My suggestion was just to show like a typical residential lot landscaping from the final plan. Done that before for 40B projects.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, because after all, we do want this to be a nice place for people to, look like the nice place for people to live.
That could be a condition in the comprehensive permit. I don't think it
Yeah, that's
affects,
what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
affects the waiver, though.
Right.
All right.
It's not applicable to the waiver.
It's not applicable to the waiver, but it kind of brought that thought up and something I suggest as
To
a
add.
condition.
All right, so,
If you grant us the waiver, we'll agree you can make it a condition.
all right, then we'll do it that way. Okay. All right, streetlights, okay. Let's see, okay, all right.
They're doing lamp
So it says,
posts.
streetlights and all proposed lamp posts will be provided for each lot. Okay, all right, recommended approval.
It's responsible to maintain the light fixtures.
All right, so I think, obviously, the only consideration I think, that is, relevant here is that we ensure that, that there's sufficient illumination of the street so that people aren't driving in pitch black dark at night. That's my understanding of what this is trying to,
Just like most of the roads in town.
kind of.
You don't want us to put streetlights in there.
No.
It kind of ruins it makes it makes the street look urban instead of rural.
Well, it's a lamp
And you guys are
post.
offering driveway
Lamp
lights.
post.
Post lamps at the end of each driveway.
And would those you think be sufficient to illuminate enough of it so it doesn't, look like, it doesn't make for a safety issue?
Yes.
So there won't be
No.
any safety issue.
I don't think the power company will even power up streetlights now.
It becomes an expense of the town at some point in time, possibly.
Isn't Plympton a dark sky community? We have a bylaw that says we are a dark sky community.
All right, so,
Right.
all right, so that would suggest that whatever the streetlight requirement is, does not seem to be of primary concern here. So anyway, so I'm sorry, we're still on street. Okay, so there is a condition, there is something that suggested might be a condition about the driveway lights, photocell activated, part of the panel, the HOA thing is, but anyway, do you have any issue with the recommended thing on that side?
We don't want the HOA involved in the post lights, right?
Well,
No,
they're eliminating
no, they're
road,
on,
the-
they're,
they don't.
they're on the individual lots. So, They won't be in the right of way.
Okay. So essentially, that will be on each individual condo unit to handle their lighting replacements. Okay.
But not switched on a photo cell. We don't want individual owners to turn on and off the lights. On the light.
All right, so what you're essentially saying, Greg, is you're envisioning a hardwired system.
Yep, I've seen it before in other projects.
Why not photo cell?
It's a photo cell, but it's hardwired without a switch, so
So who pays for
homeowner
the
can't just shut it off if they want to.
With a
operated
switch,
by
they
the
put
photo
the
cell
switch,
only.
if it's hardwired, they still can shut the break, I mean, with a photo cell, they can't shut it. Right? Well, that's
So
not
we
wrong.
break one way or the other. I
I'm sorry.
did say just a photo cell, it's in there.
You could have both
I'm
a
saying
switch
not
and a photo
switched,
cell.
like a
You
regular
can't?
switch.
Yes. Somebody, hopefully someone putting a switch in.
All right, so that sounds like, we can approve that exemption with with at least part of the condition, with the condition, that there be the photo cells tied to the panel. Let's see, what about the HOA, I guess if we address the HOA, I think that's addressing the individual condo HOAs, documents, and not the all-encompassing associations.
Because there's two different ones, there's the
Yeah,
individual
that's
ones.
right.
So the individual ones
Yes,
would be
yes.
responsible for those.
So,
Okay.
so that's how we would handle that one. All right. So now next is fire protection. Okay, we talked about the fire protection in the past. I remember that discussion about the cisterns. All right. Captain, is there anything in, can you scroll, how did you get there?
350,
How come is yours like divided and mine isn't? Mine's kind of like in the middle of the page.
19.
I guess, no?
No, it's like, mine starts at like in the middle of page 14, and yours is on page 13.
Well, that's because you gotta move over to the edge of the column.
No, it's like the
I
actual
know mine
page
too.
break.
I noticed that on mine too. I noticed that on mine too.
Oh,
It's
am I
different.
reading the right thing here?
You're involved in 40B, it's your fault.
Well, anyway, all right, okay. Yeah, can you scroll, it should, yeah, it should be its right section. Let's see. The text is right. Maybe it's just my program's a little different from yours.
That's the way it picks it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got 1, 2, 3,
Mine's
4
not
columns.
exact
yeah,
either.
The numbered column, which is Y,
yeah.
and then the description.
Could I have like shifted the columns over? Does it stupid?
Oh, by grabbing them, no?
Yeah, I might have done something like that. Okay, all right, so we are looking, let's see,
We should look at it.
one thing here. Let's see, what is yeah, I think we'll, yeah, I think the same thing. All right. Anyway, okay, all right, so anyway, okay, anyway, I was gonna ask the chief about this one. This current section, could you, okay, it's kind of,
That's,
okay, you can see it.
you can read that. no.
All right, all right. Is there anything that, as a result of as the change plans that we would need to revisit this condition in the future?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I work, my authority is under Chapter 148, the chief's designee, so I'm gonna have to discuss it with her. I don't believe there'll be any change,
Okay.
but I do have to speak to her before I make any say comment.
So I might have to table that one until a later time.
We're still proposing the 20 and the 20 and 30, we're still, nothing's changed. And that is on the current plan.
And I believe you did have a meeting with the
We did.
fire
We
chief
did.
and
It
perhaps
was-
others, where this was one of the recommendations that came out of that meeting. So it probably remains the same, but I certainly respect that you want to just make sure that the chief is on board with
Anything I say is
that.
under her authority, so I'm not gonna supersede that.
Sure, so you want to consult with her before giving a final answer.
I
That's fine.
appreciate it.
All right, so I would suggest,
Layout, is it, everything still within 900 feet?
Yes. We have not moved the cisterns.
So I would suggest
Yeah, but they use
a
valves.
provisional grant of the waiver with the, with the implied right of revisiting it, should that, should the chief's views on that matter not be not be the same. Okay, all right, so that's fire protection. Now we're on to the next section, which deals with administration, design review, construction, deposit fees. Okay, okay, obvious, hold on for 1 second, please. I want. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm just trying to get back to this section. Okay, all right. All right, so, yes, this one there seemed to be some slight confusion, obviously, that any unearned fees deposited in the 53G account must be returned to the applicant. So,
There's no design review.
so, I mean, obviously, any,
There's no
This-
design review.
Yeah, your 40B hearing acts as the design review, which is why I think they've included this as a waiver, is that they don't need to go through that process as well.
No.
It's still, it's already been reviewed, and
Yes,
it
I mean-
will be inspected as it's constructed.
okay, all right, so should we grant the exemption then, or is it,
You just take that part out. The structure inspections will still happen. Right?
Yes, it's still gonna be inspected, yes.
I should say design review, not applicable.
all right, so essentially, that's how we deal with that exemption request. Because, if there is any design review that happens through JDE between Mr. Driscoll's firm and any other firms that we've engaged. So,
Revise our waiver request and just strike design review, and leave construction inspection
Not
deposits.
applicable.
all right.
Are we gonna try to go through all these tonight, or?
Let's see, it's almost 9 o'clock.
I don't have a copy of the subdivision regs, but, so I'm not,
I just didn't know.
I don't remember what that section entails in terms of procedure. Are we safe for just asking for the exemption of the whole section and agreeing to it?
I think what would make sense is for the decision to be, or the vote of the zoning board to be, that the 40B hearing process acts as the design review as required under the subdivision control regs, and then we still have a condition requiring inspections as construction goes along.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You say we need to make a motion for that?
Well, I'm hoping you're going to make a motion on all of these that you've been saying, you have no
Yes,
objection to. Whether you do that tonight, or whether you hold that for another meeting after you go through the balance of the waivers.
All right. Okay.
Most of the ones tonight, you've been
We've okayed.
generally in
Yes,
favor of, except for obviously the one for the fire chief to just weigh in on.
Right, so- And I think in the past, I think this is probably the second or third time we've looked at waivers. I think in the past, we have deferred a final vote and just given a preliminary understanding of what we are willing to grant.
So you'll hold your
and what
vote until we go through the remaining ones?
Yes, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
So anyway,
And he said he doesn't have these, right? He doesn't have the next section.
Well, no, the next section then gets into the Board of Health Title V
Right.
regulations. You want to hear.
Yes, I think
You
we-
want the May 21st report back before you
Before
vote
we
on
go through
those.
these.
yes,
Wait a minute, before we go there, I'm not sure it's clear here, but the zoning board of appeals would be endorsing the plans under 40B, not the planning board.
Correct.
right.
And I'm not sure it says that anyplace.
Not in the subdivision regulations. No, not going through the waiver list. But that is what will happen.
Right, okay.
And to be clear, we have that endorsement on the plans. That's exactly what it says.
And I assume you include the endorsement to say, signed by the ZBA, either acting as the
Yes.
planning board under Chapter 40B or however you have it.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
And that would encompass all our decision-making under the subdivision.
It is, yep.
Regulations. All right, so, anyway, yes, as Carolyn points out, the next section deals with Title V, and obviously, we can't do that one yet because we are still waiting on those reports. Is there anything else here is there anything after that, for-
One thing you could knock out pretty easily, if you scroll to about page 21, not sure where it appears on your screen, but it is the Chapter 340, the site plan regulations.
I see it here.
Again, the Chapter 40B, your whole hearing process covers all of the same things that development would typically be subject to under site plan review. So we typically waive site plan review requirements. We don't.
I mean, in terms of, I'm not 100%, I've never seen site plan review for myself in person, but I think between this process, we pretty much cover most of the bases that
Yes.
site plan review has.
Yes.
We have multiple plans, we've been to the site, they pointed out the things we wanted to see, we talked about, so everything involving this property that could conceivably be regulated by a bylaw, I think we can all say
Yes.
that we've done our due diligence here for the site plan.
Right. So you could grant the waivers to all of Chapter 340.
Subject to specific denials and conditioning that we've otherwise discussed or will discuss. That's fine. I think that's the way to deal with it. All right, do we want to get to the wetland bylaw regulations before we leave here tonight? There's about 3 pages of them. Or do you want to wait till another date?
What page you on?
And that would be, in my document's 22.
End of page 21, wetlands.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's the,
Their pages might be different. It's the
Yeah, but that's how you print it out.
Town of Plympton Wetlands Bylaw Regulations. I printed them out legal, so it's different.
okay. Right, but it starts at section 2 and it continues on for about, 2 pages or so, and that's pretty much the end of the document.
There's no wetland regulations. There's no wetlands.
Well, local.
But isn't there some wetland delineation lines on your plans?
Yes.
Yeah, it's, well, let me clarify. They're isolated vegetated wetlands, which means that they don't border a water body, so they're not jurisdictional in the Wetlands Protection Act. However, included in the JDE comments, I believe KP as well, they wanted us to provide documentation that they did not qualify as an isolated land subject to flooding under the State Wetlands Protection Act. That is a wetland resource that is capable of holding a 1/4 acre foot volume. It's a depression to an average depth of 6 inches, at least once a year, I guess. I don't have the definition offhand, but, so we just, with the submittal that we just made, we provided a plan that delineates and provides volumetric calculations for the ILSF, or that, to prove that these depressions within these isolated vegetated wetland pockets are not capable of holding the 1/4 acre foot volume to a depth of 6 inches. So those, I would assume, would be reviewed by Mr. Driscoll in his expeditious review.
So perhaps we hold those until the next meeting
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
All right. I thought that the Conservation Commission had a role to play in this, but not about these issues?
They'd only have a role to play under the State Wetlands Protection Act. So if a notice of intent was required under the State Act, they would still have to go to the Conservation Commission for that. But the Zoning Board of Appeals has to address any local wetlands requirements that might be more restrictive than the state.
Okay.
And at our last hearing, we did have a request from the Conservation Commission for certain conditions things they wanted shown on the plan, and the applicant did agree to all of those conditions.
Right. We discussed that, we discussed and posed that at the last meeting?
We discussed, I think, on March 24th.
All right. Okay. All right, so, yes, so it does seem to me like we should defer a decision on this part of the waiver request until until Mr. Driscoll completes his expeditious review, and then we can get back, you can resume that at the, actually, that would be at the second hearing, because at the first hearing, we're going to be talking about hydrogeo matters. All right, so is there anything else in this waiver request document that we have not intentionally skipped over?
I don't think so.
Well, what about the earth removal? How do we, that's the first thing on the first page. That seems to be somewhat more complicated considering what the Board of Selectmen did earlier this evening.
Well,
We're actually hoping to get to this permit first.
and I've raised this previously, your earth removal bylaw has an exception for earth removal that's incidental to permitted work. So septic system, wells, foundations for houses, all of that would be exempt from having to get an earth removal permit. You're allowed to excavate as much as you need to exercise those permits.
That would include import and export based on the plans.
That's not where I was going with this.
Fine.
Where I'm going with this is, we have all of what has happened outside of the 40B hearing. Whatever the issues are that the select board is dealing with is separate and apart from a waiver that you would be asked to grant here. Any waiver you're asked to grant here is only a waiver that would be needed for them to actually build this 40B.
All right.
If they have been doing something without the benefit of a permit or in violation of the bylaw, that is not something that's going to be addressed by the ZBA in this permit. But the question I've been raising is, if the bylaw exempts septics, wells, foundations, whatever is necessary to exercise those permits, the question I have had is a waiver even needed from the earth removal bylaw? Like, what outside of those
In light of
activities?
what's going on here today, or in order to prevent any type of confusion about what happens, we want the waiver so that we can build this project and get the material off that needs to come off.
And understanding to the extent necessary to build what's on this plan.
But not only to
But-
build, but to remove if necessary.
Please.
Okay, sorry.
But is there anything beyond that that you're asking for? Because it's just a blanket waiver from the earth removal bylaw with not a lot of detail given.
Very well, I mean.
Obviously, you don't want the permit, which we understand.
Well, we don't want to need to get another permit if we can have the board approve the work necessary to build this project. And there's excess material there that has to get off the site so we can build this project. And if we get that, that resolves other issues. So you either need it from here or we need it from the select board.
So you can limit the waiver, I guess, put a condition on the waiver.
That's where I'm going with this, is that it's one thing for what the zoning board to do, to be prospective with respect to this project and what is necessary here. This board has no jurisdiction to look back at what has been done on the site to date.
We're not asking you to do that. But going forward, we're going to need the ability to do the site work necessary to construct this project, which
So-
involves some earth removal.
So have any specific, quantities been identified in terms of what needs to be removed from the site?
No.
And I think at a prior hearing, you might have even have indicated, Brad, that you might be shifting soil around on the site as necessary for
Yes,
grading.
absolutely.
Not removing, but maybe removing from here and shifting to lower elevations to
Right.
grade it.
Yes. So why can't the waiver just say, waiver granted to the extent that a waiver is required to construct the project as shown on the plans?
I think we can work with something like that.
Yeah.
Which means, built into that is, if you're building a septic system, you need to remove unsuitable soil, it goes, and then you bring back in suitable soil. We don't anticipate that being an issue here. Roadway, foundations, all that stuff.
Now, if we were to consider an approach like that, do we necessarily put, things like, limited to like, how many cubic yards they need to, bring in and fill, or is that, dealt with it in a different way?
Well, not if it's incidental to what's, constructing what's shown on the plan, because you can't very well say, go ahead and build 60 dwelling units and put a roadway in of 80 feet, and then say, but you can only remove, 6 cubic yards.
Okay.
Right.
So essentially, it does give them some leeway in determining how much they need to remove or add or shift.
So often, boards will ask for estimates of what we think will be brought into the site or removed for the site. Sometimes boards will ask for, how many truckloads do you think it will be? Things of that nature.
But sometimes, even with those estimates which we have done in the past, as you digging, and all of a sudden you find some unsuitable material that wasn't included, and it could be, I'm anticipating that in this particular case, but that can be substantial. We've had, because we're going to have inspecting engineers who are going to be reviewing the construction, and all of a sudden we start working on the roadway, and they say, hey, you can't shift this soil from here to there because it's not acceptable. Because they have standards of what soil, the quality of the soil, compaction, and all that business. So even when we do an estimate, it's a wide guesstimate. But we're not anticipating any substantial amount of fill, I don't believe, to be removed or brought into the site. Substantial. For example, we got some in Marshfield that's, I don't know, 50,000 cubic yards. So that's pretty substantial.
So it does seem to me like we could impose an estimate requirement into this, into the, guided by, what is, permitted to the extent that the incidental, addition, subtraction, transplant, with estimates as to how much it's going to take. And also on that subject, someone mentioned, trucks in and out of the site. Where do we talk about things like hours of operation and how many truckloads a day?
Hours of operation typically is a condition in the standard condition, the comprehensive permit. And usually, if you have a bylaw that says, it's only Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever it may be, and sometimes your bylaw might say, no operations on Sunday, that would be built in. They're not requesting a waiver from any bylaw relative to days of the week or hours of operation.
Because I thought if they were requesting an exemption from the whole earth removal bylaw, that pretty much says whatever we want, whenever we want.
Which is one of the reasons why I personally don't like just granting a waiver from an entire bylaw. Let's identify the provisions where the waiver is needed and grant those. I mean, like, for example, there's the whole, application and hearing process under the earth removal bylaw. No, we're not going to send them to the select board for a separate hearing and application because that's all part of this process.
All right, so it sounds to me what we probably need to do is to have the bylaw in front of us and go, and have them point out what particular sections they'd like, and then we decide what we're willing to grant, what we're willing, and what we're going to insist on.
Mr. Chairman, the easiest language is to say, as Attorney Murray suggested, is just to enable us to build according to the plans that have been approved.
It's got finished
No
grades,
more, no
existing
less.
grades.
Sure, I mean, sure, but I don't want you guys running around at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2
No,
o'clock.
I
We're
agree
not
with
doing-
hours of
no,
operation.
that's hours
not
of
a problem.
operation.
I mean, holidays and certain days, and then there's also hours of operation for equipment, and then there's hours of operation for the electrician, doing work. So you've got to separate those a little bit too. But hours of operation is a pretty standard condition of a permit.
All right.
So if I could just make a general statement, the grades, the finished elevations we're showing on the plan that involve the roadway construction and the stormwater management system, there'll be no deviation from those grades. However, when each individual lot is designed, there's going to be perk tests, there's going to be a septic system design. The grades may change slightly from what we're showing on these plans, based on the individual lot designs, the septic designs.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, yes, Mr. Jansen?
All the conditions that they just described, unsuitable material, grade changes, it seems like those all fall under incidental to construction, and nothing would prevent them from handling whatever arises to complete their project. But to offer a waiver to the earth removal bylaw would bypass any public comment period if it were to go beyond incidental to construction. If they have to make a road, everyone understands that there's going to be some removal or addition of material. It's not, so I don't see where the need for the waiver is.
We can't build a project without taking the material.
And that's all incidental to the project, which is allowed by our bylaws.
My concern is the language, and it's not, we didn't list all of the language in section 145 of the bylaw. The language goes on to say, the removal of earth that is merely incidental to the construction of, et cetera, and other construction or installations occurring on the site from which the earth is removed, provided that the project is being done in accordance with all required permits and approvals. The amount of earth removed does not exceed the amount needed for construction or installation, and the removal of earth does not result in topographical changes to the surrounding land. So I think there's some ambiguity there from my perspective.
All right, so I see where you're getting at, and, to the extent that you need some measure of relief from that language in order to put on your plan, I'm sure we can come up with some way to make it work without giving you more than what's required. Maybe if that has to deal with, with enforcement of reasonable kind of estimates or returns and status reports or engineer review, or I don't know how you're going to do this, but anyway, but I'm sure there's a way we can come to be able to allow you people enough enough liberty to do what you're planning to do without turning it into a 24/7 gravel pit, which nobody I think wants. So anyway, so I think we will have to find a way.
I have other projects in other towns where they're 40B projects. I'm the town council in Marshall. We have one where they're removing 355,000 cubic yards material.
That's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, on Ferry Street. And to get to a finished grade for the project. And it takes a really long time. So what the Marshall Board did was impose conditions on truck traffic, hours of operation, if there's any type of damage to the roadways caused when any of the material comes off, that all has to be repaired at the cost and expense of the applicant. Would agree to all of those types of conditions.
All right, and then this yardage that you're just talking about, is that being removed now? Has it been finished removing? How long would that likely take?
Well, they started it in the fall, and they're just about done.
So 6, 7, 8 months, 9
I mean,
months.
But that's not
this
an
site.
unusual amount of fill for a particular site.
This
So
site's not
we're nowhere
close,
near
not even
anywhere.
close.
This is a,
Yeah.
All right, so what is your rough estimate as to how many cubic yards has to get removed from this site in order to put your plan into effect? What, 250?
I haven't done an estimate on it yet. I haven't. I don't know.
Did you say 250?
Yeah, I mean,
Not even close.
all right,
No.
No more than 100.
all right.
but if you put a condition there, it's 100, or an estimated 100, and it's 110,000, we have a potential problem. That's my concern.
I understand.
Not to mention tracking all of that.
Yeah.
And
Obviously,
that's
the
just
town's
going
not
to add
operating a
a
waste station.
significant expense to the project.
Well, it does, you know, I mean, maybe the way to, you know, the way to handle it is, you know, obviously some sort of monitoring of, you know, and with, you know, reasonable limits as to numbers and hours and the rest of that. And maybe even a time, you know, obviously, to the extent we can impose a time limit of how long this permit can.
You can move 800,000 if you use 18 wheelers 24/7 in a very short period of time, but,
Obviously, we can't do that.
well, we're not asking to do that either, but.
Sure. We did the site walk, a bunch of us here, that are here tonight and others, and we looked at the grade, and it seemed pretty flat and level throughout, at least where the roadways are going. So how much would you estimate would have to come out? Maybe it's just remove and replace with the same stuff you have there.
But
such that-
if you look at the plans that we submitted,
Right,
you'll see there's a number of mounds throughout the project.
Right.
What those are sitting on are fairly close to grade, but it's primarily the stockpiles that are there now, various piles.
but
Just the loam, rock that we've hauled in, things like that.
But that has, was that taken from the same grade that you're gonna put the buildings on? Or was it from some other location?
Pretty much as you go further back in the site, yes. At the beginning where you come off the cul-de-sac, it's more of an even slope down almost to the cul-de-sac. So you have a little bit of cut at the beginning of the road.
Right.
Then you have some stockpiles that are in the way of building the road right now.
That's all gotta come out.
That's all gonna come out.
Yeah, but it exists, it's on the site now, so it's. needs to
And
come.
identified as on the existing conditions on the plans that we submitted. So all we're saying is that we know where we're starting, we know where we finish, and
But
we're not
that's
gonna vary
all
from that.
processed into different type materials, from loam to sand to fill, gravel.
Yeah, we sort through all of that.
Sorted mechanically, and then trucked off. And that's being done currently, right?
No, we're stopping as of the end of the week,
Oh, okay, so
just to comply
I
with
guess
some.
there has to be a turn of events that says, okay, now for the project, no more selling the dirt. But, yeah, I'm just trying to imagine the stuff that's there has to be brought away before you can start a roadway.
I don't think it's a big deal in this particular development.
But that's earth removal, so that's where I have this conflict in my brain.
I mean, obviously, I would think that the permit is going to give them the permission to remove those mounds that were there, that we saw, that are impeding their ability to build their road and their houses. You know, and I think, I'm not sure if there's anything we can really do to stop that if we want, you know, otherwise the project doesn't work. I mean, after that, then I think it's, you know, incidental means reasonable, and whatever conditions we impose would have to be geared toward ensuring that it is reasonable and not excessive. So I guess we would probably have, the best thing we'd probably do is to take, as the next review hearing, which is the 27th, say, is have the bylaw before us and see what sections we need to adopt, which sections we can grant them a waiver, which ones we want to modify with our conditions. I think that's the only real way we can address this particular issue.
In the end, all we're really looking to do is to take what's on the existing conditions and make it into the proposed conditions with some deviation, and we'll agree to any type of reasonable conditions on removing any excess.
Would it make you feel more comfortable if we delineated the limit of work? You know, made it clear as to what the limit of work is on this plan, so there's no possibility of removing material that's not required to construct the project?
If you can put that in writing, that can be, you know.
Circle the areas.
We'll just add a erosion control line on the plan and call it a limit of work.
All right, so essentially, not taking anything below that line, filling to that line. Is that the idea?
Yeah, like, in other words,
We won't
all
touch
the
any
area,
land beyond that limit of work.
all the area that was proposed as open space on the previous version of this plan was on a separate parcel A. It's not like we're now gonna develop what was parcel A. We're just using that area as lot area to comply with Title V. So we can still, the limit of work is not going to change. So we can, we
We
can
can
still.
show you the areas that we're not gonna
We
disturb.
can draw a line on the plan and show you where we're not, we don't have to work beyond to build the plan.
And we wouldn't be asking for earth removal beyond that line of any type.
All right, well, if that's what your plan's gonna say, okay, this is the area we want to remove, and this is the grade we want it to be at, I think we can use that as a basis for,
Yeah.
determining what other bylaws are gonna apply to that removal process, like the hours of operation, the number of trucks per day, and all that good stuff. So I think that's the way we approach it, so at the next, review hearing, we should
We'll
have
get you
that.
a plan that shows that.
All right, well, I think we've pretty much done about as much as anyone could expect of a volunteer board tonight, so.
You did a lot of work.
We appreciate it.
Having the schedule helps too.
Anyway, so now, I've already talked about the schedule, we've all agreed on that, so. So the next hearing will be on the 21st, at noon, and that'll be a hybrid hearing, so we can hear more about the hydro-geo specialists and any fire comments.
Fire captain.
Yeah, from the captain, through the chief through the captain, and that'll be that. So anyway, so.
Just yours or mine? You have one more.
To adjourn?
Yeah, sorry, so I'm.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, so Suzanne made the
motion to
motion,
adjourn.
I second it, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight.